is to kind of approach it from the point of view of evolution. Now, of course, evolution itself is the paradigm which we put our understanding of biology and history into, so keep that in mind. But what we can see in our evolutionary biology is that there are certain things that work and there are certain things that don't work for humans. For this physical framework of an actual human and the way that we construct ourselves into a society, there are certain things that do not work pretty universally, and there are certain things that do work pretty universally. So this assertion sort of challenges the extreme relativist views, but it still maintains that, let's say, if our fundamental framework of our biology or of our society or of our culture changes, then the paradigms, the set of all paradigms we could have, the set of facts we could accept, those would then change. So the heuristic I've created, which means it's a sort of methodology, a tool for identifying something, taxonomizing something. Danny actually created one for animation. So their colorful thing here was basically kind of a heuristic for determining what animation is. So this heuristic is a method someone can use to analyze facts. So we'll first identify the belief context or the paradigm of the assertion. Let's say you take a fact and you plug it into this heuristic. So the belief context, that is like what framework you're working within. So you could specify humans, you could specify the paradigm you're in is evolution, that kind of thing. The scope, this one I have a little bit of trouble explaining verbally, so bear with me. But the scope is sort of what realms within those paradigms, the first category, you're addressing with that assertion. Then the agents, or which agents are involved and affected, that kind of speaks to asking if this belief is true, and you can imagine the web now that I explained earlier, how would that change things? How would that change the people involved? Because I think that people are so central to how we form our beliefs. So you kind of have to project forward exactly what nature this truth that you're plugging in here will have, and will affect the way that your belief system works. And then lastly, you want to look at the use case for this. So a lot of my thought here is based on the school of pragmatism in philosophy, which is the set of ideas or principles which are meant to guide us based on usefulness, whereas someone might have a correspondent theory of truth, which means that they think a sentence is true if it corresponds to something in reality. The pragmatist will actually reject that, and that might seem counterintuitive to some people. What the pragmatist suggests is that the sentence is true if it works. If it has a function for us that we deem useful, then it is true. So we can use the example of, let's say, I think what I have, like Santa, right? An adult will create the idea of Santa for a child to motivate better behavior throughout the year, right? It's an incentive structure. So for practical purposes, Santa is real. The idea of Santa is true. Everyone, Santa is real. But only if you're a pragmatist, because you can't point to anything in the world and say that it's actually Santa. You can point to the idea of Santa and say it works as if Santa was truly real. So, as a pragmatist,
doesn't that have a pretty obvious downside, like the 2020 election was rigged, and that serves the purpose, say for me, not really.
Yeah, but that's why you have to use the heuristic. So number 3, you have to ask what agents are involved. So I think we should test the heuristic now.
Yeah.
I want to elucidate this for everyone. So let's say in the trolley car problem, Tobin presented this to us this morning. If someone made the assertion the lives of 5 people are always worth more than 1, how do we use this heuristic to address that? So we ask first, what is the belief context or the paradigm of the assertion? So it's hypothetical, right? We're not actually doing this. It's utilitarian, this assertion, because someone is believing in numbers outweighing a smaller number in terms of morals. It involves a categorical imperative because they use the word always here. It involves you believing in the pain and suffering of other people because, of course, if none of that mattered, we're getting all the way down to that level of the question. If none of that mattered, then it wouldn't matter, you wouldn't care. You believe in morality. If you didn't believe in that, then this question doesn't even apply to you. You accept the existence of numbers because you use the word 5 and 1. You believe in causality so that your action in pulling the lever or whatever the system is contrived to will do something, and you believe that things are not determined, so you actually have a choice in the matter. Because of course, if you did not believe in determinism, or at least in practice, then you would say, I don't know, who cares? I wouldn't, the trolley car problem solved itself. Whatever I do is what I was always meant to do, and that's not productive for this.
My arm went and pulled.
It was determined for you to make the
Yeah.
choice.
My arm just did its arm thing.
It wasn't me that put the giant saw on the
But judge, but your honor.
It wasn't me that put it on the side of the train. Put a giant saw on the side of the train to kill everybody. It was just what you never wanted me to do.
Yeah, it was a no. So we need to accept all of these things first, right, in the trolley car problem. And that's all the information we got from this one statement. So let's look at the second one. The scope of the question is in ethics, morals, policy, duty, power dynamics, mathematics. There's probably more. So you can taxonomize these things and extract a lot of information about this one sentence. So I also think that a second thing that the heuristic helps us realize is just how much detailed information there is in what we assume to be the idea of truth. That statement's simple enough by itself, but what's actually contained with it is a huge amount of information that we've all kind of like created and scaffolded out of our own human brains and tendencies to do that. Did you have a question, Ryan?
Yeah, I'm not quite seeing how 1 and 2 are that much different.
1 and 2. This is what you have to accept before. This is what you have to accept after. Like before the statement to understand it, then after this is like the domains that it affects. Like, yeah. If you're having a statement that can do an action, then that's where 2.
So like what, number 2 is sort of like what concepts are implicated by this?
Yeah.
And number
Yeah.
1 is what concepts does it presuppose?
Mhm.
Or does 2 even kind of say these are the things that are going to change? Okay, these are your beliefs regarding ethics, morals, power dynamics, etc. are going to potentially change after you have to encounter this question.
Right. If we wanted to think of this in terms of the web analogy, this is sort of like you're asking what web you're in. Like, okay, what world are we in? What are our core beliefs? Then here you're asking like, okay, how you're trying to assess here and kind of infer like what in the web would that affect?
Because when I hear the word scope, I just automatically think like in terms of this question, like, oh, are we going to now say that the trolley problem could be extended to hundreds of people?
That's more for, and perhaps the terminology is a bit odd, but yeah. So we'll get on to 3 now. You asked what agents are involved and affected. So these last 3 are pretty influenced by pragmatism, because I believe here, for the sake of this heuristic, that a lot of what belief is how we use it in practice. A huge component of then assessing the truth is what will it do in practice. If it's impractical, right, then your heuristic can tell you, it's not that much. That statement's not too valuable. We can't really use it for certain circumstances. Joseph, do you have a question?
Is the scope similar to like how you like your view, your like culture and everything plays into scope? So like.
Yeah, it's like what's the impact here? Like what are we talking about within our framework? Because if you did not accept morality, right? If you didn't believe that morality existed, you couldn't talk about ethics, morals, at least those 2, right? You couldn't talk about those 2. So once we have the first step, we can move on to the second step and address what scope is.
Okay.
Who is affected, right? So in this hypothetical circumstance, we use these 2 to say, okay, I'm in this situation. A person on the track is 5 other people on the other part. So then if we wanted to for what practical purposes we have for this question, even though it's a hypothetical, you can extrapolate that to every human in a life and death situation where their life is dependent on another person making a decision, which might affect the lives of other people. That's sort of the basic idea within the trolley problem, once we've accepted those first two. And what can we apply it to now? It can be applied to medicine, public policies, yeah, sure. Moral duty, and pain treatment. Okay, no. So now what do we even do with this heuristic, right? And this is where it's sort of a little tedious, is because we have all this information out of this statement. We've extracted this information. This is the point that we're at. Now how do we actually use it? I've talked a lot about actually using truths and using the information that we have. And the way that we use this is by taxonomizing, using this heuristic on another statement, right? I could pick any statement, but I'll do one that's similar enough so that the heuristic can break it down in a comparable way. So, let's see. If someone said the lives of 2 people are always worth more than 1, we applied a heuristic, almost everything would be the same, and that's not really that helpful, right? Like, if someone said the lives of 5 people are not worth intervening on if 1 person will be killed in the process, the opposite of the trolley problem, we would actually have to change a lot of things here. And in my view, the heuristic, because we change things at this high a level, we can't talk about anything down here. So you can use the heuristic to figure out exactly how you can talk about it in relation to other facts. So if you disagree at a paradigmatic level, at this high level, you can only compare them at this high level. So back to politics. Let's say you're arguing with a liberal or a conservative. You have a disagreement. Someone says, let's say, money should not be taxed because people are inherently good and they can spend their money with it. And then another person says something like the opposite: people should be taxed because they can't be trusted to spend all their money in ways that help other people. You could use the heuristic to identify both of those, and you pretty quickly realize at the paradigmatic level they disagree. So it's my opinion here that you should never talk about this, you shouldn't talk about this, and you shouldn't talk about this because you agree at such a high level. It's not productive. That's what I think is, you can observe too if you watch, let's say, like political debates or like opinion pieces on things. A lot of people don't ever argue at these highest levels because it's sort of pretty abstract. But what ultimately happens is that they're just arguing, they're arguing down here, but they don't even have the same set of things. They don't have the scope of morals. They don't have the same people who are being affected. They don't have the same use cases for their beliefs. If you don't have those, then your truth is not comparable. So what my heuristic is suggesting, what I'm suggesting, is that when we do make these truths, when we try to build a human truth together, we have to apply this kind of thinking and break down what we want to say about the world, what we have an impact on the world with when we say it, and we can argue from there. I think that's my presentation. So.